Hello and welcome to Correspondence, our weekly selection of reports from our network of correspondents around the world. Now, this week's show takes us to the United States, Italy and Cameroon, but our first stop is Greece, where some 10,000 refugees are still waiting for their asylum requests to be processed. The Greek government has promised to accelerate the procedure, but in the meantime, these asylum seekers are stuck in limbo in refugee centres. These refugee centres are, many of them, on Greek islands or isolated in other ways, surrounded by high concrete walls and barbed wire fences. This report by Alexi Kefalis, Haris Katsigiannis and Sudanayir.
A few kilometers away from Athens, the Ritsona Refugee Reception Centre is under construction. The authorities have decided to build a wall there to better control entries and exits. Officially, it appears to be a protective measure, especially at night. But the camp's residents don't really see it the same way.
It is a violence against freedom and democracy, you know. It is a violence on humanity also. Because when you're not when you see that the camp is in Aun, located far from the town, and it is among nowhere. So what does it mean to have walls around you? How you are going to find job in the city? How can you find a job when you don't live in the town?
Parwana is 17 years old. Originally from Afghanistan, she experienced the hell that was Moria, the disgraced reception center for refugees on the island of Lesbos that was destroyed by fire a year ago. She began to write letters from Moria to warn her compatriots of the conditions and to express her own distress on paper and later on social media networks as well.
This is a book that I wrote in Moria. It is letters to the world from Moria. And the name of the book is My Pen Won't Break But Borders Will. I do tweet about the condition. And you know, when I noticed that there is less possibility for me to communicate with the rest of the world, I started using the social media.
Today, from a little cabin that she shares with her parents and sisters, she's writing her next book, Letters from Ritsona.
A refugee is someone who once had a normal life, a home for his family, a school for his children, a hospital. Hard story, it is a very tough story because you are not accepted, and a person who doesn't have identity should struggle in order to have the right in the society, you know.
She's been taking Greek lessons in her quest for integration and independence. Parwana still believes in a better future, even if the temporary roof for the camp seems more like a permanent one.
To Italy next, where dotted around the country are more and more ghost villages, abandoned country houses and warehouses. The exploration of these sometimes hauntingly beautiful deserted spaces has become a favourite pastime of many photographers. Now, the phenomenon is known as urbex, or the exploration of abandoned urban spaces, sometimes rural ones too. This report by Natalia Mendoza and Lorenzo Penza.
Valerio and Marco are fans of urban exploration, an activity known as urbex. Members of a group of enthusiasts, they regularly take part in expeditions to discover abandoned places, like this house.
Io diciamo che faccio il pizzaiolo. Questo lo faccio quando ho la giornata libera, quando sto in ferie.
With a camera constantly on hand, they immortalise these buildings, with just one rule: to leave the place exactly as they found it.
Noi fotografiamo un po' per fermare ulteriormente il tempo. Siamo alla ricerca di questo, di trovare delle fotografie, delle cartoline che testimoniano qual è stata la vita del luogo e delle persone che ne hanno abitato. Qui è pieno di cartoline. Francia, Cannes, Bruxelles. Lui diciamo che è una persona che si è goduto la vita, che ha fatto molti viaggi.
In Italy, urbex has recently become quite an attraction. Every week, thousands of tourists come to visit this abandoned town north of Rome, destroyed by the Napoleonic army 200 years ago. A financial opportunity for the neighbouring village that has decided to charge for parking.
Dovremmo iniziare con 5 euro a macchina. Abbiamo fatto un po' di marketing territoriale e abbiamo capito che, per esempio, il tema della città fantasma attira turismo. È molto importante perché il bilancio di un comune come quello di Canale Monterano non ha cifre a disposizione.
With over 6,000 ghost towns, Italy has become one of Thomas's favourite playgrounds. He's a professional French photographer, discovering this abandoned 16th century palace.
Le palais est ouvert et je pense qu'à partir du moment où les gens respectent le lieu, viennent juste faire quelques photos, ça reste ouvert et ça c'est vraiment une chance. T'as vraiment pas ça dans beaucoup d'autres pays.
But beware, this pastime can verge on illegality. If the place is locked, it can be considered breaking and entering. In Italy, you can risk up to 2 years in prison and a €1,000 fine.
Now, our next stop is Cameroon, where gold mines in the east of the country have been increasingly threatening biodiversity, and in particular one of Africa's most emblematic animals, the hippopotamus. Mercury pollution that has been seeping into rivers is the cause for a higher than usual death toll of late, and locals have been sounding the alarm. This report by Tony Menga, Stefan Noah and Simon Batum.
Open pit on a riverbank, one of the countless gold mining sites along the Kadei River, home to one of the last blood of hippos in eastern Cameroon.
The
hippo population in eastern Cameroon is in danger of becoming extinct. After several hours, just a few raise their heads above the water. Justin Jekoa, head of a nature conservation NGO, is at the river to count the animals. Today, only about 20 remain, compared to 110 years ago. Over the past 6 months, 3 of them were found dead here. The activist believes the mysterious deaths are linked to gold mining operations.
L'hippopotame, c'est une espèce intégralement protégée, donc la population est en forte diminution, aussi bien au Cameroun qu'à travers l'Afrique centrale. Parce qu'avec les activités minières qui se font de plus en plus croissantes dans cette zone, leur habitat écologique devient de plus en plus fragile.
C'est de là qu'il se trouvait.
This local filmed the carcass of the last hippo that died by the river a few weeks ago. The community is worried.
Nous, on se sent mal à l'aise puisque si les hippopotames là continuent toujours à mourir comme ça, là, même nos petits frères, nos petits-fils, même nos fils là, n'auront plus le temps de voir les hippopotames.
Conservationists say mercury is the main cause of the hippos' deaths. Several mining companies in the region spew the toxic substance into the river. Justin tests water quality regularly and says it shows how harmful the element is to the ecological habitat.
La turbidité de cette eau est très élevée et donc qui n'est pas propice notamment aux poissons et même aux hippopotames qui sont là. On peut voir des huiles qui traînent sur ces eaux-là et ces huiles-là sont des lubrifiants et donc toutes ces activités concourent à la dégradation de cette eau.
Ecologists have raised the alarm, pointing out the devastating cost of the gold rush for the area's priceless biodiversity.
Now, in the US, French lycée students have been sitting their baccalaureate exam this year in pretty unique circumstances. First off, it was a whole new bac général from 2021 onwards with 6 core subjects. And apart from that major change, this year, students had to prepare for the exam all on their own because of the pandemic and the conditions surrounding that. This report by Fanny Allard and Mathieu Mambal.
16 is in 6th form and has just begun taking her baccalaureate, starting with the French language exam.
This is where I studied for the past year.
Many schools in the United States have yet to reopen, meaning that since the pandemic broke out, 16 has had to attend class online.
It was stressful because it was the unknown. We didn't know how things would go. It was hard to look towards the future and to the baccalaureate because it was all new to us, and it was new for the teachers too. We asked questions they didn't know the answers to. It's so much easier to do this at school. I didn't realize that before.
A break between classes usually means a drink with her mum, Stephanie, who's now taking care of her 4 children full-time to help them with their studies.
Je pourrais dire à mes enfants que j'ai survécu une pandémie mondiale.
Forcément, il y aura ça dans les livres d'histoire.
And she believes her children will have learnt a lot, and not just from the textbooks.
I think they've learnt to be independent because they were alone, they used new software and adapted to different circumstances. I think it'll make them stronger.
Meanwhile, the graduation ceremony is getting underway at the French School of Washington. Most of this year's baccalaureate was marked through continuous assessment, meaning on their work during the school year, rather than on final exams.
Our pupils had great results in the baccalaureate. Many have got into the universities they'd applied for. 100% of students passed, and 96% of them with honors.
Private and state schools in Washington are all expected to reopen after the holidays in September.
All right, that brings us to the end of this week's show. Special thanks to George Yazbek and Natasha Millaret. We'll leave you with these pictures from California, filmed by Pierre-Eric Laurent and Eric Pape. As you'll see, Californians no longer have to wear face masks in public. It's the same here in France, and that means lots more smiles. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.
France by France 24. From the workshop to the catwalk, follow the latest trends on fashion. From fine dining to architecture and much more, discover uniquely French talents on You Are Here. Straight talking and frank views from residents of France's tough suburbs who film their lives for the Bonheur Project. An in-depth look at political and social events shaping France in France in Focus. A quirky insider's guide to understanding France and the French on French Connections. Every day, watch France by France 24 on France 24 and France24.com.